Hello, everybody. My name is Will Rauber. I currently am the assistant controller at AIM Leasing Company. I'm the treasurer for the Youngstown Score Group. I have my Bachelor of Science and a major of accounting from Youngstown State back in 2006, and just recently wrapped up my MBA at the end of 2019 from YSU as well. Been in the finance world for a long time, did a very short stint in public accounting, and happy to be out of that now and onto the private sector. And I've been with SCORE for, I think it's about a year and a half now that I've been with SCORE. So it's been great so far.
And you've never looked back.
Nor better.
Thanks, Ron. Steve, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Steve Poullas. I am a senior technical specialist, full-time job for Zeckelman Industries. It's the largest manufacturer of pipe and tube in North America. I also started and I'm co-owner of the Soap Gallery, which is an art gallery in downtown Youngstown. I graduated from Hubbard with Will from high school in 2002. Kent State, a degree in technology in 2007, and got my master's from Case, master's business administration from Case in 2017.
One side note, Steve, Carl Stennett, who's going to Case to do his master's this fall, he said now that he puts Case Western Reserve on his resume, people actually will listen to him.
I bet my wife hates that comment.
He said that he never gets an answer on his resume, but now that he put Weatherhead School of Management, people will answer him.
Yeah, well, he'll have student loans that are more than my mortgage, so we'll
exactly
see how he does. Yeah.
Do you enjoy that, Steve? Did you enjoy being able to say that you went to Case?
You know, this is being recorded, Courtney.
I know. I saw it's being recorded.
Yeah.
He enjoys that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started, guys.
All right. Steve is a much more eloquent and, he did go to Case, so a much better speaker than me. So I figured I'd start it off a little bit, kick it off with, just our general outline, and then kick it over to Steve for a lot of the, brilliant ideas. Really, the innovation is Steve's thing. As an accountant, it's a little difficult for me at times to push through and think of new ideas. So I think the overwhelming thing that I have when you're looking at a new business idea, being innovative and pushing to that next level is, certainly trying to bring in a group of diverse people that can help you and push you along the right path and ask you the right questions and make sure that you're making the right steps as you move along. Certainly something that SCORE is doing for a lot of people who contact us. We have someone for pretty much everything, and some individuals that have such a depth and breadth of knowledge that sometimes you just need one person. So it's certainly a good thing to have a good group surrounding you and to really lean on the people who are better at maybe creating ideas or having a marketing background, something along those lines, of which maybe I'm not the best person, but I can certainly help and sit back and ask the right questions and make you think about the right things. Certainly with Steve, him and I have known each other for a long time. I don't even think about back to 2002 and Hubbard graduating because it seems so long ago at this point. But him and I have always had that relationship where he's a little bit more of a free thinker, and then brings me out of my box sometimes, and then I drag him back into mine. So him and I sat down, we talked about really the motivation and the idea of competitive advantage, and it's something that I'm gonna let him really get into, and as far as motivation goes, and the right steps, taking the right steps to think about, your idea and frame it in the right way.
So, Will, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Because you're an accountant, and I like to use the term bean counter.
You need them, right? There has to be one.
No, I realize that. And it's supposed to bring some sense into the relationship from a fiscal standpoint. So knowing that you're an accountant, how do you get around the fact that, I think when I deal with engineers and I deal with accountants and people that are really educated in the sciences, it's a little different than people educated in the arts. And by the same token, the question I'm going to ask you, the artist in this whole equation is going to say, well, why do you need to keep track of your finances? Why do you need to plan? Why do you need to do this? And doesn't understand that. So how do you reach a happy middle ground or medium in this area where you may be taking some art and science, and how do you combine the two to make them make sense for everybody?
As well as anybody, at the end of the day, people usually approach me and my friends in the accounting field when they think about needing accounting. It's probably already too late, unless you're experienced in business and you've gone through those growing pains already. It's one of those things that is in the back of your mind. So for me, getting on the front end and helping people realize what the potential, when you think about even just making estimated payments and not having a huge tax bill due. And personally, if you're creating your own business and you're receiving income, and maybe you set it up so that you're getting a 1099, something like that, there's a lot of surprises that come along and come down the line. So I try to get people as soon as possible to understand the potential ramifications, but typically it's way later. So they already know they need me. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices from, what your grand plan and your idea is versus, what you can actually do. Because the ambition is there, obviously, for a lot of people. They want to shoot for the stars, but sometimes you can't do it in that short time frame. You got to take the proper steps and build to that. So really, once you show them and walk people through a pro forma, for instance, which I love doing, it's one of those things that not a lot of people get excited about, but it's one of those areas that are important. And you can see, hey, this number's red or this number's black. You see the trajectory of red, 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 and it finally starts to pay off down the line. People, I think they start to respect that, but oftentimes it's via difficult situation.
Well, I think to that point, that's very true, because like I've done some turnaround work and all I see are red numbers. And it gives me great satisfaction when you start getting black numbers.
Exactly.
And you start dealing with, change that you're taking place in the particular business that you're trying to turn around. So I think that's very positive change. Steve, how would you answer that question?
Let me take it in two parts. Number one, the point of this was talking about starting new business ideas. Right. When I started the gallery, I was a bit younger, and I had so much vigor and horsepower into trying to make things work and iterate and doing new designs and doing new creative ideas. But when it came time to file my taxes, that was the last thing that I had the horsepower and throughput to do. I had no desire to do that whatsoever. And it was such a big, huge weight off my shoulders when I was finally able to find somebody that was able to handle that for us. And I'd gladly pay that money, because it was not something that I was passionate about. It was not something that I was going to get out of bed excited to do in the morning, or even want to open the Excel documents and try to sort through transactions and things like that. So I think that what excites Will and what excites me are two totally different things. And you need someone to cover for your weaknesses in those areas, that things that you might not be passionate about, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation. as far as, and that kind of addresses your question as well, as far as the artistic things. I'm excited about things that are creative, excited about things that maybe are abstract that I can bring into fruition. But with sitting there and looking at a spreadsheet or a bank account, it's not something that I enjoy whatsoever.
Yeah, that complements.
But it's a necessary evil.
It is.
Whether it's an evil or not, I wouldn't say that, but because the IRS doesn't consider it an evil. But I think that, it's something that you got to realize when you go into business, that maybe you're not good at that, and maybe you need help with that particular area, or maybe you need an investor that's skilled in that particular field. Just like if an accountant were to go in, or an engineer were to go into it and start an organization, do a startup, they may feel somewhat overwhelmed as well, because they're going to need ideas, and they're going to need to be a little more creative, and it may limit you. It doesn't necessarily mean it does. It may. So.
And I think, feeding off of each other, when you find someone you can trust in that's more creative. I mean, Steve brings out a little bit of that in me, and then thinking about some of the accounting processes and making sure that you have all the money in the right place and you're paying your taxes on time. Someone talking about that and just reminding you is important, because a lot of times it's just something that doesn't cross your mind if that's not how you're wired.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the fact quarterly taxes are due. That's what you depend on your accountant to tell you and not get behind in them.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And sales taxes and payroll. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
so go ahead, Steve, if you want to get into what you want to talk about tonight. I just had that question pop into my head.
Well, do you want to talk about competitive advantage first, and then we'll talk about passion after that?
Yeah, that works. That's one of the biggest things. I almost work backwards when I'm thinking about how to develop a business idea. Everybody has something in their head. I think it comes in everyday life.
Sometimes it's rocks, but
oh yeah, something's rattling around up there. But I work backwards from a lot of these things. I see something I'm doing every single day where it could be improved, but how do you do that? How would I do it? How can you make it better? Things like that. So once I'm more of the back end, after Steve says, hey, we should do this, or this is the app we should get into. For me, it's really taking a look at the competitive advantage and why would you go into business from an accounting standpoint. And from my mind, the only way it works is I want to go into the business. I want to make money. I understand it might not happen in the first year, the first 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, but I want to make sure that there's something there that's sustainable, that competitive advantage that we're going to have, that's going to allow us to build and grow and to pursue other ideas that we have. What do you do better than anyone else? Is it a cost-based advantage that you have? Can you build the raw materials cheaper, produce it cheaper, distribute it cheaper, something along those lines? Is it a brand new product? Things like that. Or is it just a new idea? Do you have a patent for it? Is there something along those lines that's going to allow you to not just do something, but do it better and do it better for a long period of time? Every product has a life cycle. Eventually it's going to go away. How long is that life cycle?
So what's your definition, Will, of competitive advantage?
Really at its core, it's just something that only you can do better than somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And make it come to fruition. It's great to talk about it. I can do this, I can do that. But unless you can get out there and you can prove it, after Steve talks about passion and how he comes up with some of the ideas he comes up with, and I had on here to talk about Porter's 5 forces, and really that's the first place that I look to make sure you have a sustained competitive advantage, is to really get into the industry that you're looking into and do a deep dive on really the 5 biggest pieces of the puzzle there. And I think typically you're going to walk away and realize, hey, it's a pretty good idea, or hey, this is a pretty terrible idea and maybe I need to go back to the drawing board.
Yep.
So Steve, if you want to take over, and then we'll bump back into a little bit of that industry analysis. We won't go too in depth, but just a general overview.
Sure. I think you want me to jump to the passion thing or talk about competitive advantage?
It's up to you. Either way.
Well, competitive advantage, in my mind at least, is I'm not going to try to get into a market that I don't think that I could make money in. Even if I'm second or third best in that market, then I can start to build some momentum and play to my strengths and maybe acquire some other similar businesses or some other verticals to get to that top spot. But you don't necessarily have to be at that top spot to be competitive in the market. You just have to be competitive.
Steve, one question that I have is prevalent in what Will said. At SCORE, as you mentor a client, how many have the profitability of that particular market and business in mind as first priority, which I agree with you, you should.
Very, very rarely do you have anyone that's focused solely on profitability. They're looking because they want to do something that they think they're good at, that they're passionate about. And that's mainly how most businesses are started on a small business level.
Yeah, but I mean, would you, if someone wants to start a grocery store, would you locate your store next to Kroger's?
Of course, yeah, because then you'll get people that are, no, I'm kidding. No, you definitely not. If there's a popular coffee shop in town, you're not going to put your startup coffee shop right next to the one that's popular. You're going to want to try to give some space and some differentiation between the one that's successful, and what can you do differently from that one that one's not currently doing. And we'll cover a little bit of that with some of it is covered in Porter's, and I'm going to go over the SWOT analysis. So we'll discuss that here in a little bit.
Okay, Courtney just made a comment. She said she agrees they want to follow their dream more than anything else. And that's pretty much true. They have a dream of creating something, and they want to follow that without the reality of, can you make money at it, or can it be sustainable, or can it be fulfilling for you? Those are all things that you might take less money at, okay, because it's fulfilling and or because it's something you want to do, or it's your dream, but you can't take no money at it.
Unless you want to be a nonprofit and there's public benefit and you get grant money for it. That's the alternative path.
Yeah. Okay.
And we do help people out at SCORE that go down that path as well.
Right. Okay.
So diving into that passion thing, you definitely can make money if you have all of the things in the right order, starting a vape shop or starting the latest trend shop. But if it's not something that you're passionate about and it's not making you much money, and you deal with the typical struggles that every business has, especially in the startup mode, you're not going to be wanting to stick through it when it gets hard, when your taxes are due, when you might have to make the account positive when you don't want to, or figure out when you take the profits out, when do you reinvest. If it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to want to reinvest it because you want to continue to do it. I started the gallery because I was passionate about the arts. We didn't have a gallery in Youngstown at the time. There were a couple small little things, but no full-time functioning gallery. And Daniel, who is my partner, who's an artist full-time, that's his job. He had the idea, and I had the business sense, and we partnered together, and we were passionate about making sure that an art gallery, an art space, a space devoted to that, would work in a business sense, and not just a museum, but a place that would actually produce art events and sell art. And so I was passionate about it, and here we are, even past COVID, 5 years later, going on 6 years. And if I wasn't passionate about it, I'm quite sure we would have closed.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of takes a lot of people over the top is loving what you do, not just there's always going to be parts of business that you don't love doing, but if that over the reason you show up every day is a passion is it's so important.
Yep.
For
Agree.
Sure. You have more, Steve? Go ahead. If you
No, I don't. I think that probably leads us into the 5 forces. So when you have an idea and you think, I think I can make this work, one of the first things to do is to start to evaluate the market that you want to enter into. For me, when I started an art gallery, there really wasn't a market. So I was kind of creating my own in the local area, but there was a market broader. There was a market regionally, there's a market nationally, if I could ever get there. But you have to evaluate that. What exactly is my business in the local market that I'm in, and how can I have a broader reach into other markets? And so that's when we get into the 5 forces that you're evaluating your industry.
Yeah, and in that world for sure, it's you're gonna have not all of them are gonna just because a business has a potential issue with competitive rivalry, but the other 4 are good. That doesn't strike you out. If you're missing one of these items, there are different things that you can do to keep pushing. And really, it depends on obviously how much money do you have to start this? How passionate are you about it? Is it what you're going to feed your family with? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about, but it's a good place to start at the end of the day for the industry. And then before you move on to market analysis and pro formas and things like that, really making decisions. So when you look at the first of the 5 forces, the competitive rivalry, for instance, you want to look at the number and the strength of your potential competitors. If seeing a new company come into the market, are they going to freak out, drop all their prices, and put you out of business as soon as possible? It really, how many of them are there? Are they willing to do something crazy like that to start to take a loss to get you out of there so they have future profits? It's an important thing to think about. The second one we have listed from Porter was the supplier power. You have to think about the people that you're going to get your raw materials from, or any supplier in general. How many options do you have? How important are you to their business? If you're their only customer, they're probably going to do quite a bit to keep you around, and you have a ton of bargaining strength at that point. How many can you go to? If you have 25, that's great. If you have 100, that's even better. So it's certainly something to think about depending on your industry. And obviously, Steve, with you in the gallery, suppliers have, I would assume, quite a bit of power, right? Depending on their name. So it's something that they have to think about as far as who are you going to bring in, and can you afford to bring them in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
or can your market afford to purchase their
exactly. Can they support that as well? Yeah, it's something you have to think about. The third one on the list is buyer power. So of your customers, how many of them are there and how big are their orders? It's kind of the vice versa, the flipped switch of suppliers. Now you're the supplier, so you got to think about it. Buyer power is a product a need or a want for a buyer. We look at the pandemic time, and toilet paper is a good example. People kind of freaked out when that was a little low. Now you go to the other side and you look at wine. I like some wine, but if it's not there, I'm not going to go crazy. Now the toilet paper is a little bit of a different story. So you got to think about some of those things too. A threat of substitution is the next item on the list here. If it's, is there a process that's being done with software, for instance, and anybody could go out and start doing it manually or outsource it to a different company, something along those lines. How cheap, how easy is it for a consumer or your customer to substitute? And that, you're not thinking just like Pepsi and Coke in that situation. You're talking about a vacation versus just going out to dinner versus a staycation, something along those lines. So substitutes are something that are very important to think about. If times get tough, can a customer live without your product?
Well, you remember in our group, we had a discussion about toilet paper versus bidets.
Yes. Yeah. So Steve,
little bit of a
Toilet
difference.
paper, what was that, Steve?
How do you pronounce it? Well, it's
Bidet.
bidet, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we have this group chat of all our friends back from high school. Geez, that's crazy. But amidst all the craziness, we call it the Consumer Reports Group, and we talk about, hey, what are you guys looking into? We don't want to buy anything that's defective, whatever it is. And we have a couple of friends who just swear by bidets and didn't care when the toilet paper shortage was a thing. So yeah, it's one of those group chats, but that's a perfect idea of a substitute. I don't know much about a bidet, how do you install it, anything like that, but that's a perfect example, Steve.
The luxury market.
Yes, exactly. Epicurean is I think what they call it. But then the final of the 5 forces is a threat of new entry. And think about it, you're going into this world. How easy is it for somebody else to come in? How easy will it be for you to get a foothold in that market? And how are you creating that? How can someone else just copy you and do exactly what you're doing? How regulated is the industry? Everything along those lines you have to think about.
And to your point, Will, you talk about barriers to entry in those particular markets. So a gentleman that Steve and I both know came to me a while back, and he asked me if I could help him put a glass plant in. And I said, yeah, if you have $500-600 million, we could probably put a glass plant in. And I said, what are you trying to achieve here? And really what it boiled down to was that he really wanted to get into manufacturing, and he wanted to do the connection for auto glass as compared to, the electrical connection. And I said, well, that's not the glass business. That's a electrical connection business. And yes, I could help you with that because I know somebody who may be very interested in selling their wire harness plant. But I said, you really show, I don't want to say this way, but I don't know how else to say it, but you really show your ignorance by saying, I want to get in the glass business, because glass is capital intensive. It's like somebody saying to Steve, they want help from him getting in the oil pipe business and tubing. Well, do you realize how much that capital equipment costs in that business? So there are barriers to entry in those particular businesses because you can't possibly get in them unless you're a conglomerate and you have that kind of cash to spend. So it shows you, I think, when we deal with clients, sometimes how ridiculous that might be. They really haven't thought out what's involved in doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great part about having us and being able to bounce ideas off of, especially the group of retired folks that we have, the core group that have been here a long time. They've seen these things. They know in ignorance is not necessarily a negative thing.
Sometimes the question with the most ignorance maybe would lead you to think of something else that normally wouldn't come about, and only comes about because you triggered that in someone's mind about what you could do.
The light bulbs go off. With things like that, just like including new people from your company and into more advanced meetings. First of all, it helps other people grow and ask the right questions. But secondly, some of those questions that get asked make you think about, a different approach than the one you may have already set your sights on, which is very useful, I think, in the long term.
I mean, but here's a good example of how that stuff happens. So we're sitting around yesterday talking about some issues we have with the new 3D printer we put in. And we're talking about, hey, the voltage that comes into the building is 220, the 220 line. And we're running anywhere from 200 volts to 240 volts up and down in that spectrum that comes in. And I said, if you really understand electricity, I'm trying to explain to the guys, you really understand electricity. What happens is when you have a high voltage line coming in, a lot of that energy will dissipate before it gets to the source. So it just, for lack of a technical term, it evaporates in the air. It's lost. You can't control it. And so you have fluctuation going from 200 to 240. That may be okay. You know, you may be able to withstand that, but if you can't, then how that power is transformed from where it's generated into a transformer to transform it into higher load level, you may have a problem with that. You may have to go get the transformer replaced. But, you know, we had that discussion. We started talking to the owner of our company about it and had a very intelligent discussion about power generation through it. And it was helpful to some of the younger guys that were in the conversation that this is how it works from a power transformation standpoint. That's not something you'd normally know unless you're an engineer or unless you've spent enough time working with power issues coming in from the source into your operation and seeing the fluctuation in it. So it's just, you know, it just shows you, I think, that, you know, you're going from a highly, maybe an untechnical person to a technical person, but you have to be able to understand the fact that you've got engineering type issues that I can't explain them. I can just tell you what has happened in the past, you know. So.
Sure. You get enough of the information over.
Yeah, exactly. You learn over time, and you know what the issue is, you know. So
Great. Well, I'm going to jump into SWOT. So SWOT analysis, the biggest differentiation between Porter's and SWOT is Porter's is more of a micro. It's more of a big picture. You're kind of looking at an industry as a whole. Sometimes it's a little dangerous to try to apply Porter's to an individual business because, say, like Verizon is in so many different industries, so it's hard to really drill down. When you're doing a SWOT analysis, it's more of a macro. So you're zooming in on the personal, your personal strengths,
right,
personal
Steve?
things for the business. Yeah.
Micro. SWOT's more micro, right? And the Porter's is macro, like large. I think. Pretty sure.
It's actually, you know what's confusing? Those words are actually, I learned them from photography, so the definitions might be different. The macro lens, you zoom in, and I could have that totally wrong. I don't know. Anyway, basically the concepts remain the same. Porter is a large scale view, and SWOT is a detailed zoom in view. If that makes more sense to people. I could have those words mixed up. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this, you're looking at this from your own personal level. So you're looking at what strengths do I have as I'm starting a company? What assets do I have as far as education, knowledge, skills? Do I have a reputation? What can I use and leverage to leverage to my strength? And what that goes back to that competitive advantage that you could have over your competition. Weaknesses are the negative factors that detract from your strength. So the things that you can't necessarily build upon, that you might probably need improvement on. There's things that you might not have that other companies do have. So you might not have the reputation, you might not have the money, you might not have the same amount of equipment or things that your competition has. And it's good to highlight that so you know how to cover for that in the future. And the opportunities are the things in the business environment that can help you be successful. So is the market growing? So are you, is there a bigger demand for the product that you're making? Are there things? Are there events happening in the area that will help you grow? Are there changes to regulations? Is market trends going in your direction? If there's things that you can take advantage of, and then if you have a good reputation, sometimes you can create more risks. You can take more risks, and you have chance for more opportunities, especially if you have people think highly of you. If you're just starting out and you make a false move, that could be your last move. So it's good to see your opportunities that you have to grow. And then finally, threats are the things from external factors, things that are kind of beyond your control. Could you be a typewriter developer and then the word processor comes out and then the computer comes out? You have to look at what can come into your market that could impact what you do as your core business and close your doors. So you have to look at all four of those things holistically to see what could be impacting you and how you build on your strengths and your opportunities and minimize your threats and your weaknesses. And that's more of a personal view, how you do look at your business and how you go forward. And I think a SWOT analysis, I heard, it should be done every year for your business. So you should be constantly thinking about what is going to my strengths, what's my weaknesses, and developing that. If you have a team of people, they should be going through a list of all these things. Almost when I've seen it done, I've seen it done on a board where they put strength, weakness, opportunity, threats, and everyone lists them, and then they check next to them which ones they agree with, and then you can kind of see concisely who in the business is agreeing with what is going on. Is there some idea that someone has that you might not even see yet? Is there a threat that you don't see yet that someone else does? It's really good to do as a team analysis. And if you're starting out with a team, I recommend doing that for sure.
Yeah, Steve, I like the point of it being an ongoing thing. Yeah, that's especially important to, and even once you could do it as frequently as you want. If you have a monthly P&L, it might be it doesn't have to take a long time if you already have that structure set up. You can kind of blow through that with your fellow owners, employees, whoever it might be. And also, again, I recommend to have as many people in there as possible. Get the people's ideas from the ground up, because that really enables you to have a view from each part of the structure of your organization.
Yep.
Don't you think if you were part of Kodak's management team that you kick yourself in the ass for not knowing about SWOT?
They really not know? Or you just make...
Well, I'm saying if they were doing a SWOT analysis, wouldn't they know that digital photography was right around the corner and that they were going to lose 100% of their market share in film?
Yeah. I mean, once you get so big, it's easy to just think that you're going to keep going forever.
Yeah.
That's a huge pitfall that comes into play in some of those major corporations, that's for sure.
Yeah, because Kodak was the largest producer of film in the United States. And who uses film today?
Just
no
Steve.
Yeah, just me.
Oh, Steve, you use film?
The artists still do. I mean,
yeah,
right?
I like.
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, their whole market's gone. So what's Kodak today?
Well,
Kodak, was 40,000 employees at one time, and today are they 1,000?
They started to try to get into copiers and printers. But they were way too late to the game. One of my favorite stories is that I learned in business school is that Blockbuster tried to buy Netflix for $1 million when they were first starting out. And then Netflix put them out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you start to think about, what was and who the main pillars of American industry were, I mean, you start to think about Westinghouse, for example. Westinghouse was as big as GE at one time. and as diverse as GE. And what happened to the business over the period of time? They decided to get in the television business, and basically that put them out of business.
You talking current GE or the old GE?
No, I'm talking about Westinghouse itself.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
The GE, I mean, you think about this today. I mean, if you're going to go out and buy stock, you would, if this was 1975, you'd say, yeah, part of my portfolio has got to be a chunk of GE because it's dependable growth stock. Would you buy it today?
No.
No. I mean, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
It's not going to grow. It's probably going to decrease. The management's not progressive. It's probably regressive.
Mm-hmm.
So you sit back and you say, well, I'm not going to have that a part of my portfolio because I'm going to buy, I can't buy too many shares of it, but I'm going to buy Google, and I'm going to buy something that, is far more intuitive to buy because it's at the cutting edge still and not a has-been.
But I think there's a danger with Google as well. I think that's just my opinion, but they could overaccumulate and mismanage just like GE did. And GE just spiraled out of control with so many divisions. It's unmanageable.
Well, I think when you look at Google, you got to say, and this is why I think, I don't know what the stock trades at. I suppose I may have some in my portfolio, but they're part of something else. But you got to think about this. Google is not anything physical. It's what they control is information and power. And so, the fact that they know everything about each one of us on the call today and the other 338 million people in the United States that aren't on the call, they know more about you than anybody knows. And for them to use that to their best advantage from a marketing standpoint, that's what marketers want, that information. And so I think Google will remain high in value, but I think, Steve, like anything else, we would have been saying that about Kodak 35 years ago as well. And they lost sight of what they were doing, and they didn't manage it well, and they realized technology pushed them out of business with iPhone technology and that stuff. But you think about Google. I mean, they're positioned to control the entire marketing market because they know everything. They know where you've been the last time on the internet, and are you going to go there again? What are the odds of you doing that again? Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal.
Yep, I agree.
It really is. And the big thing I think that I want to push to everybody while we're on this, and Ron, kind of the reason why we're here is just to reach out to us here at SCORE and let us help you. We have people, like I said, that have a wide range of abilities and a wide range specifically in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania that we have connections, we have people that are ready and willing to help, specifically with a business plan. All these things are great, and these are all pieces of a business plan. When you want to go and you want to get funding, it has to be tight. The numbers have to make sense. The idea has to make sense. Banks are going to want to see this analysis that you're doing and how you came up with the numbers. And that's something that the group here can certainly help with.
Yeah. I mean, Patrick, are you still on?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, if you can. I think we got a great example of that with the person we're dealing with in the hospitality business and trying to pull things together for them that run a bed and breakfast. You want to just describe that without using any names?
Sure.
How we got involved in that?
Yep. So they signed up and they were looking for some help because they want to eventually get out of the business. And they ran into like this very crazy coincidence where they had a couple staying there and they went outside and sat with them and was talking to them for a little while. And young couple, the girl said, you know, my dream has always been to have a wedding area for people to have their weddings at. So that grew from a bed and breakfast now to having weddings, which they've always had, but there was a tent. They're thinking about expanding by building a building on their property, pavilion for weddings. And so within less than a year, in October, I believe, is when they met. And the couple ended up moving in to one of the rooms in a separate building that they have. And they're living there, and they're helping them grow the business, and they're trying to find ways of how to get out. So we were helping them with finding an accountant, an attorney, and giving different ideas of, you know, ways for them to get out of the business. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, they're not getting out from a bankruptcy standpoint. They're getting out from selling the business to another couple.
Right.
That can continue to grow the business.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's, you know, one of the things at SCORE that we have a great, you know, Patrick called me one day and I assigned that to him. And he said, Ron, what the hell do I know about running a bed and breakfast? I said, the thing is, you need to know how to run a business. And you've been successful running a business. Questions are maybe slightly different, but they're all around profitability and making sure that things are buttoned up so you don't lose money at this. They're really all the same problems.
Yeah,
it's like doing the turnaround that I'm doing in Ashtabula. I mean, the issues are never going to go away, and it's going to run smoothly, and they don't need you. Things blow up all the time. It's just how fast can you tackle those things and get them to where they don't make a big effect on the business. And it's a bunch of small effects. And you continually reduce those and manage those downward, and you're successful with it. So.
Yeah, I like to think that a business is really only as good as its people and its processes.
You're right.
Both of those are excellent, and you have a great company.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about people and process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been learning a lot about that. And if I could ask you about SWOT a little bit, Steve.
Sure.
So I've read about it. I haven't done any exercises with it, but I want to. It's part of the system that I'm doing at work here. So when you tell somebody, an employee or someone in your leadership team, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right?
Right.
In their mind, those words don't make sense. So what kind of questions can I ask them to kind of get things flowing and thinking in the right direction?
Okay, so strengths. What are we really good at? What do we do that we feel prideful about, that we do better than anybody else? What we have a bigger facility to make things? Is it more modern? Do we have more techniques that our competition doesn't have? Do we have good culture? Do we have a good HR team? You know, what do we have in our position? And that could be anything from very small to very large. That'll start getting those juices flowing. Okay. The nice thing about doing it and writing it out and having everyone have a magic marker and writing a list going up to the board, is that people will be able to see other people's ideas. And then once you get a full list of that, so just the strengths, I'll just start with that. You can start doing check marks. Put a check mark if you agree with this. If you disagree with this, put a 0 and let's talk about why. And then some of those strengths can go into the weakness category. If you think it's perceived strength, but it's actually not, you can move it over into the weakness area. What are we deficient at? What maybe we don't pay a competitive enough wage. maybe somebody has better quality, somebody gets their supplies cheaper than us. Maybe we don't have good culture. What in the business it could be improved, and then sometimes that can get moved over into the opportunities area, where okay, we don't have good culture, but we could if we did this, or we don't have great employee retention because we don't pay enough. So what if we increase the wage? Which
Right.
I'm sure every employee is going to want to say.
Yeah.
But it gives you a good view of where you're at as a business.
Mhm.
And then threats, people are always going to know the threats pretty well, because they have a good view of who's around them. And maybe they can see something that you can't see. Maybe there's a new product out there that you don't know about. Or maybe someone's, setting up to start a new business or acquire another business and eat your market share. There's stuff out there,
Right.
just to get those juices flowing and trying to figure out what make that list. And that kind of gives you a holistic view of your organization.
Cool. Awesome. Have you guys heard of the book Traction?
Yes.
Have you read it?
I'm not. No.
No.
It's a very, very good
We
book.
are, ever since I read the book, I have been addicted. And I have kind of gone like headfirst dived into it, and I love it. So if you guys get the chance, I really feel that reading it would be a huge benefit.
Is that by Gino Wickman?
It is indeed.
Okay. I'll add it to the list for sure. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, it's phenomenal. We're following it almost to the T, pretty much. We have an implementer out of Cleveland that is working with us as well, and we've been doing it since the beginning of the year, and we have weekly meetings now, and I'm starting to push it down to all of our other departments and everything too. So, really good read.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good book and good process.
Yeah.
Good. I'll definitely check it out.
So any other questions, guys? Anything else you guys can think of? We got about 5 minutes left here.
Nothing from me, Steve. I asked mine all along.
We wouldn't have it any other way. You keep us honest.
Exactly. I believe the best thing about these sessions are the conversation.
Yeah, I like this a lot. This is really the first kind of group atmosphere in a while, like Zooming wise. It's good. And this is what's good to do with your team too. I think, like Steve said, the threats, I always think back to some of my previous employment times, and talking as someone who would buy materials, talking to the suppliers and getting an idea of what's going on in their minds, that our CFO is not going to know, our operations guy, they're not going to know. So really the people that are doing the work have these relationships with your suppliers, with your vendors, and you can really get a lot of information if you include those people and include as many as you can.
Yeah, I mean, think about your particular business. I mean, who could have guessed that 4 months into Biden's term that, gasoline prices diesel fuel prices would have jumped as much as they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so you got to hedge against that, and not knowing what actions are going to be taken by the president or by the Congress or Senate. I mean, it's a crapshoot, and you got to protect the way you protect them is you have an out clause in that and adjust the pricing as you go along. But we learned that from the last fuel shortage, that we adjust them as we need to.
I mean, and that's, all these plans are well and good until something goes wrong, and then you need to step in. And that goes back to what I do every single day, and what I love to do is that on-demand forecasting. You don't want to go 2 weeks and not know what's going on. You have to, you know, when an issue arises or an expected issue, a price increase of 25% goes out, how are you going to handle something like that? And you know, the great businesses that thrive on making adjustments and finding the right people to make it happen. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah, and when you put together your SWOT analysis, that's a threat you should be identifying as you don't know what's going to happen.
yes,
We'd like to say we know everything, but we don't.
not even you.
Not even me.
Are there any tools that you like to use besides Porters and SWOT, Ron?
No, I think those are both good tools to use. I mean, I think, you know, to your point, Will, about this session tonight, it's really brainstorming about different, and I think we're showing the fact that brainstorming and talking about ideas and how you would solve them and what the solutions potentially could be. That's the simplest tool you can use, and it creates dialogue between each individual department in your business and starts to identify problems. And you got to realize then when you put the SWOT analysis that it is really a threat, and how do you manage to it?
Yeah, that second step's the hard part. Identifying is easy.
Yeah.
You know, taking the corrective action and sometimes preventative action and being able to identify it before it happens. Those are the hard parts.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, get to the point where, you know, they want to solve the problem, but they don't really know how to solve it. And I think that decisive action is a requirement of getting this stuff done and stop the bleeding, make sure it gets done quick. And what it's over the years, you know, of doing turnaround work, that's really, you know, what I've tried to assess is how can I stop the bleeding? How can I get back to, I don't need to be turning around to profitability. How do I get back to break even so I can see what I got? And then look at profitability and how we change it.
Sure.
So, it's, you know, when a lot of people will say, why does it take you 4 years to turn around a business? And I said, first, we got to clean up the mess that took you 25 years to create. That's true, you know, so.
And something
Anyway.
of that too, you want to address as far as what type of risk do you want to take on, especially when you're evaluating your threats? Like, if you're in good enough financial position, do you pass those costs on to your consumer, or do you eat some of those costs to gain market share so that you can gradually increase your price and have competitive advantage? You know, you have to think about
I think you're right, Steve. You got to take a look at what kind of market are you in. Right now, what I say is there's so many shortages of materials around the globe and prices are going up, which is really going to cause an inflationary action in the United States. And that started to happen under Trump and then is continuing under Biden. And at some point, we're going to have to say, wow, this has really changed, because I don't know about you guys, but I just went in to buy some Old Spice deodorant. And I know that I used to pay $1.99 for that. And it's $7.49. How is deodorant tripled in price in the last few years?
I went and got the dog wash today, and they said that they upped their charge $15 because the shampoo cost went through the roof. So I don't know. Maybe there's something in the soap business. I don't know.
Yeah.
Stop wearing it.
Famous people for their commercials.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much tonight. It was a good discussion, and appreciate all your input into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep. Take care. Have a good night.
We'll talk
All right,
soon.
you too.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.